this is going to be the worst filming thing you've ever done.
I'm unscripted completely,
Exactly.
yes, which is probably dangerous in some respects. Basically, because though I trusted my team, the other team may not be putting the right score on the other end. Ooh, you see where I'm going from? I always had that love of using the numbers to show pictures. So they recognised that fact and gave me the opportunity to create my own department called Business Intelligence. The opportunity has always been, how do you deliver that magic of, let's say, business advisory or insights of the business without Excel? How do I make myself redundant? I want the client to be completely self-sufficient, showing the secret sauce of what we do. Whether it's £1,000, 1,500, 2,000, will go out the window because there's a file. Once they suddenly realise, actually, there's a little bit more to actually allocating cost to the right pot, or actually allocating or getting paid better, or allocating and do some of the trickery of, let's say, allocating costs to a direct loan account or something. They suddenly realise, actually, we do know what we're talking about. Why should we focus on data processing now? We should be focusing on educating the clients. As accountants, we are quite risk adverse because our clients do listen to us. They take action upon what we say. And what we do say, we need to ensure that maybe 90, 100% we're correct. The economy is changing. There are, 1.4 million sole traders who currently file their own accounts and tax returns, which will never be turning to an agent. I'm not there to create followers on TikTok. I'm in the wrong age for that. Creativity is really not what accountants should do. And if we are, we're probably in the wrong game. As we all appreciate, MTD itself will not happen unless accountants and bookkeepers are ready. If we're able to do so, we're supporting potentially competitors. I don't think that end goal's ever going to happen.
Won't get past PR.
I think the one piece of advice that any new accountancy firm should do is...
Welcome to Ask the Accountant bonus podcast. We have cool friends. Now, if you've never heard of us before, then we go live each and every Monday. It's a raw and uncut podcast, which is released the following Wednesday. On that podcast, myself and Johan talk about all things accountancy, from what makes accountancy so great to problems our clients are facing. Furthermore, we encourage everyone to either join us live or pop us a question using the links below. Now, today we're going to sit down with one of our cool friends. These bonus shows are designed to be the place to learn all about the people in our industry. So sit back and relax as we invite our latest cool friend onto the show. I almost said ask the expert then. Welcome everybody to the very first episode of Ask the Accountant, We Have Cool Friends. Now, normally if this is the first time you listen to us, you'll know that we go live each and every Monday at 8:30 a.m. And then we have a podcast that goes live to your ears on a Wednesday. So today we've got our very first guest, number 001, and we've got a t-shirt to prove that. And Johan, we had a massive talk, didn't we, about what the first guest was going to be. We wanted to make sure that we had a few criteria that we're going to hit. Now, number one criteria was that we wanted to get someone who was a fellow expert in QuickBooks so that we could go and have a little geek out about what QuickBooks could be. So with that brief that I presented to you, you went out there and you found yourself the best guest possible. How did it go?
I did. I tore up your brief because... first thing we said about Ask the Accountant was we're going to be software agnostic.
True.
So what better way to do that than to invite Mr. Sage? So to join us today, we have got Chris Downing from Sage. Chris, I know you as Mr. Sage. I know your personality of the year at the Luca Awards this year for the accounting industry, but I don't actually know what your official job title is at Sage. What is your job title?
Ooh, my job title. There's the official one and the one which I use externally.
Ooh,
so the official one, because like everything, Sage is a big corporate business. It has tiers, it has groups, it has themes, and therefore I'm the director, one of the directors of product marketing for accountants. But actually, do you understand what product marketing is? So therefore, I just call myself director for accountants and bookkeepers. Keep it really simple, and that's what I do.
And as accountants, we need that. We need simplicity. So as simple as you can put it, the best. I think what I would like to start this whole conversation about is I want to go right to the very beginning. So I always tell people whenever they ask me, you know, the story of Aaron Patrick, I always go back to when I was sat there as a kid and I was going around doing my little paper round. I always wanted to know what I wanted to be when I was older. So can you take us from that moment of what you wanted to be to how you got to where you're sitting now?
Oh, it depends how far I want to go
I
back.
want to go all the way. Let's
Let's start with a sensible age.
go for it.
So when I was 10, my dad said, you need to earn some pocket money, earn the value of money, okay? And for those who are not from the Southwest, there's a game called Skittles, okay? So this is a bit like bowling, pins, balls, and all that stuff. And it's not as technical and sophisticated as we know it. It's quite manual, and you have people called sticker-uppers. So basically, people throw the balls down the alley, they knock the pins down, and some kid down the other end picks up the pins. Now, as a bit of, let's say, arithmetical fun, I would then try and, in my mind, try and add up the pins as they're going along. So rather you got someone on the other end writing down all the numbers and add them up, etc., and the spares and everything, I would then, in my mind, memorize those numbers and add them all up.
That's impressive.
And therefore, no, basically, because though I trusted my team, the other team may not be putting the right score on the other end. Ooh, you see where I'm going from?
You had to audit the other team's work.
Yeah, there we go. So therefore, I've always had a bit of a love for numbers and patterns, and also it was putting the effort in. So I was sticking up Skittles every Friday night, and then it became every Thursday and Tuesday. So I was sticking up 3 times a week. So I was doing a lot of counting and everything. So I really like numbers. I like that engagement, the energy, working with people as well. Even though I was like 12, 13 and I was going out late at night and in the pubs, etc., coming home late at night, etc. But then it came down to career choices, and I always wanted a profession. I wanted something which I could use, and therefore was it legal, was it accountancy? And I always thought accountancy, whether I didn't like to go and practice, I could go and apply that trade somewhere else. So obviously go to school, college, etc. And when I was at college, I thought I'd do a bit of work experience. So I went and did some work experience with a little old firm called Milstead Langdon at the time. So in Taunton, they employed about 20, 25 people. They had a little bit of insolvency, etc. So I did my work experience. Now, I forget, it was something like Lotus 123 is in terms of the software.
Yep.
But actually, this was like 96, and they had computers. Everyone had a computer, which was really rare.
Yep.
Let's be honest.
Yep.
They may have just been a green screen, but everyone had a PC. Did my work week experience, then did college, university, did geography as a degree, but thought I wanted to be an accountant because I could see that as a profession to go into. So I just literally wrote a letter off them saying I'm looking for a job. There were 2 firms in the town. One was Milstead Langdon. The other firm literally had 1 PC throughout the whole practice.
Yeah.
So
Common.
you could see where I went to.
Yeah.
And that's where I started off. Office a junior, doing the accounts, processing books from manual records. I always saw a liking to using Excel a little bit better. I got exposed to something called Sage DOS. And my first proper client was a client with multiple butcher shops. So using Sage DOS, lots of normal codes, lots of information, lots of sales information. And I worked out how to extract data via a text file and drop it into an Excel spreadsheet. And then suddenly I was turning out management accounts really, really quickly for this fast growing business, getting under the numbers, showing what they could do, the opportunities, where cash was going. And then suddenly you turn these numbers into graphs and charts because they weren't numbers people.
No.
They loved doing what they do day job. They couldn't really interpret a P&L. But if you show them a pretty chart with sales per shop and where are the opportunities and how they're spending money, there were the trigger points. And that was where I realized, actually, though accountancy is great, there's something more to it.
Yep.
And therefore, it's a case of over time, working in various departments. So I was a great firm to work for. So lots of opportunities. So I was working in corporate finance, did a bit of stint in insolvency, variety of clients in terms of audit. So you picked up that trade in terms of how business operated. But I always had that love of using the numbers to show pictures. So they recognized that fact and gave me the opportunity to create my own department called Business Intelligence. So this was like the late noughties, and BI was like a new buzzword. This was just before Power BI came into play, but it's all about taking information, making it more interesting, more usable. Clearly, Excel was the tool of choice. Majority of businesses were using Sage 50, or they were using QuickBooks Desktop. Cloud wasn't really around, and therefore these are businesses who really valued the data. And that was a really great way of introducing the service of the firm to a new business as an opportunity of actually getting that firm across, plus also value-added services. And that just grew out. And that was really where my interest came in terms of using technology better, getting involved with the various tech companies. And therefore, over those years before, let's say, Sage tapped me on the shoulder, it was actually working with as many people as possible and that real keen interest in terms of using technology differently.
Wow. It's almost a bit sad, though, that you were seeing this whole, yes, as accountants, we understand numbers, but the businesses don't. They need to see graphs. And yet, as some of us sat here today, are thinking when we tell other accountants this concept, that this is why it's so powerful. It's not to give a flash report, it's to give the graphs so that the business owner can see the patterns better compared to a list of numbers. And 10, 20 years on, we're saying that's still pioneer.
It is.
And it's a minority thing.
Very much so.
You've been doing it since...
It's also a skill set, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, as we all know, people only use maybe 5-10% of Excel. I was probably using only 30-40% of using Excel. And Excel is a fantastic tool if used properly. And does this come down to the fact that accountants are always experts in what they know and what they invest their time in? They're going to be experts in how to use tax calc, tax filer, Sage Accounts production, all those softwares who are getting the accounts out. They know all the tweaks, know all the tricks, how to edit the notes. But when it comes to, let's say, those side offerings, maybe they don't have that confidence.
Yep.
And when you think about the requirement to provide that information to the client, sometimes that is a skill which only very few people in the firm will actually have. Yep. And therefore, even though it's a fantastic opportunity, it also probably something which restricts that growth of that firm, because you then have key person dependency. And therefore, the opportunity has always been, how do you deliver that magic of, let's say, business advisory or insights of the business without Excel, or train the client to do their own reporting?
Yep.
And the way I was working with clients in my latter years before I left practice was, my philosophy was, how do I make myself redundant? I want the client to be completely self-sufficient in terms of their business reporting, analytics, which one means that I've done the job correctly. It also means they're still going to be a sticky client because they'll be buying other services, but it means I can then scale up and work with other clients with my team. And that redundancy was always challenged by the fact that Excel was in the middle. And therefore, having tools like Spotlight and Futurely sort of coming onto the scene, but let's be honest, they were only working with Xero and QBO at the time. Yep. And also those businesses were quite small in nature. Yep. They weren't, people using those tools weren't using them properly. They weren't capturing all the information, and really the reports were quite flat and bland. And therefore, Sage 50 always get delivered. You had data all over the place. You could get out via an ODBC link, pivot table all day long, and then bolt in other solutions or other bits of data. So that was a real sort of turning point in terms of the opportunity, which was missed at the time. Because if you could cloudify Sage 50, it'd been amazing. But then again, also the reporting apps around weren't quite ticking the boxes in terms of what you need to do to actually replace Excel. But we're slowly getting there, though, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it's that word confidence. I think you're absolutely spot on there, because if you think about it from accountant skill set, then we do analytical reviews all day long. We're checking things from year to year. We're already doing the bits that you're talking about, that, you know, that business advisory section. We're just keeping it in-house. We're not showing the clients that bit. We're doing it so we can tick a box to say that these accounts are okay, and these, you know, final set of accounts are we can sign them off already at the year end. But I think it is that confidence, isn't it, to just take that bit that we're doing all the time and actually go, there's a monetary value to this, and we should be at least passing it to clients. If not free, we should be putting it there.
Also, right, educating the client. Like, so many accountants would never do what you've just done with those reporting and getting the client to do their own reports, because they see that as cutting out a revenue opportunity. That's a threat.
Showing the secret sauce of what we do.
We're dispelling the black magic that is accountancy. Certainly what I've been pushing for with my clients is educating them to understand it. And it's not a black magic thing. These are just numbers. Let's put them into graphs so you understand them better. Now I'm actually going to show you the software. You can just press run so you can see the reports when you want to see the reports. You shouldn't be held to ransom because we're busy. I think it's certainly in line with a lot of the things we do now. And personally, I think that's fantastic that you've been doing it for so long.
But isn't it just about having the right controls and trigger points in terms of getting involved? Because if we put management information reporting to one side, just think about the day job, set of accounts, tax return. We allow junior members of staff let loose on software, produce a set of accounts, but we have controls in place to make sure the quality of the output is what we expect as a firm. Now, surely we should do the same thing when we're trying to advocate how clients should be using cloud software or bookkeeping tools for the very first time. We have controls. We nurture them to do certain things. Code up a bank account, raise a sales invoice, allocate a receipt. Once they've done it once or twice, it just becomes a habit. It's right. And therefore, once they become uncertain, there's something called a telephone. You can have a conversation to actually get some help. And that's the confidence which needs to be created. And therefore, if accountants are concerned about showing what people can do in bookkeeping tools, really what we should be doing is help companies show how are the inner workings of our year-end accounts files, our working papers. Because if our clients saw how much effort we put into dotting the I's and crossing the T's and all those schedules, that fee, whether it's £1,000, £1,500, £2,000, will go out the window because there's a file. Oh, there used to be a file. It could be an inch thick, but still showcasing the work that we do and the quality and the effort we apply.
Yeah, as you say, that so much actually we can teach our clients. So like we're looking at a lot of our clients ready for MTD, so we're saying, well, we still want to do our own bookkeeping. We just promise we're going to do it 4 times a year instead of once a year. It's like, great. We're now looking at processes and systems that can help us control that, as you just said. So we're looking at SIF Analytics, their audit feature. We're looking at Dex Precision. We use to monitor their cloud accounting software.
It's quality control, isn't it?
We can deliver the same quality control that we would deliver if it was done internally. Because if we're having to report 4 times more than we normally do, there's going to be a potential cost increase there. So the clients want to know what their options are. And actually, if we can educate them, and by doing this, they start to get a better financial understanding of their business, a win for everyone.
It's also the perception of value and the skills that we've honed over many years. Because once they suddenly realise, actually, there's a little bit more to actually allocating costs to the right pot, or actually allocating or getting paid better, or allocating and do some of the trickery of, let's say, allocating costs to a direct loan account or something. They suddenly realise, actually, we do know what we're talking about. It's so important to get it right. And that's the value that we bring. And this is the challenge with maybe those once a year conversations where we get the records, we do the magic, we return a set of accounts and tax return, not actually explain all the effort we applied and all the adjustments that we made, all the thinking that we applied to save them tax. We're not actually told them how much tax we've saved them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is going to be down to the fact it's timing as well, isn't it? Like, we're in a point of a bit of a transition when it comes to software. We've seen a huge increase in terms of what it can do. And we've got to kind of almost feature parity between all of the big guys, and we're at a really good place, I'd say. But realistically, there's going to be a bigger change coming at some point, and there will be more automation. There will be the opportunity for clients just to have it all be done by AI and everything else. That it's not going to be tomorrow, but it will come at some point. So as accountants, we've said it so many times, but we have to stay relevant. And it's those conversations you've just said there, where it's not trying to hold on to, can we categorize things for you? It's what can we do with that data to actually make them sticky, make clients actually see us for who we are and give value to our service. So
it's the inevitability that transactions will be coded up correctly first time round. It's sad to see that Flux app has died, but actually that's a lovely little insight in terms of what's possible. You make a payment, the receipt's already there as part of the transaction, and that knowledge can actually, let's say, fuel how things should be categorized. And as we're already seeing with, let's say, the new ITSA solutions out there, where you've got, let's say, the OCR built into the app, it's reading the supplier, it understands who that supplier is, and giving hints in terms of how it should be categorized. And in 99% of the time, that's good enough. And therefore, it's a case of how do you use that data and that knowledge to actually do an extra level of coding if you need to do so. Which means that why should we focus on data processing now? We should be focusing on educating the client, because inevitably the technology will enable you to have that automated process of bookkeeping, which means that suddenly again we can use that data to do what we're best at doing, which is getting compliance at the door, tax advisory, and then discussing about business performance and what can happen next.
And it's real-time data, isn't it? It's not 10, 18 months down the line. It's actually real-time.
But also, is that one of the reasons why business advisory, data analysis, and business consultancy have always been, let's say, stymied? Because as accountants, we are quite risk adverse because our clients do listen to us. They take action upon what we say. And what we do say, we need to ensure that maybe 90, 100% we're correct. And when you're giving advisory services, you always think about how good is this information? Is it complete? Is it how accurate it is? Have things been coded up correctly? Is there something missing? And therefore, the ability to slice and dice the information, see historic, see patterns, that helps supports our view. But the tools haven't really been there unless you're, let's say, a zero buff, Excel buff, using pivot tables, etc., using analysis tools. But now suddenly, as you say, all the tools are coming on par. The ability to have great reporting within the app, all the main players have that now, which is great. And therefore, it's actually the experience which comes with that and how intuitive those reports become. And also how the business owner can, for the very first time, get their own insights because they want to ask questions themselves in terms of how a business is performing. And where they get stuck, engage the accountant. Now, the accountant may say, well, is that lost revenue? But actually, are you not looking at the opportunity to have even more clients? Because the economy is changing. There are, 1.4 million sole traders who currently file their own accounts and tax returns, which will never be turning to an agent. The economy is going through challenging times. So when there are challenging times, that entrepreneurial spirit kicks in. There'll be lots of brand new businesses out there. So we need to save time and create capacity as accountants.
We interrupt this podcast for a chance to talk about our sponsor for today's video, Client Engager, the all-in-one practice management solution for accountants and bookkeepers. As an accountant myself, I always need that peace of mind that my client's obligations are met, and Client Engager gives me the chance to sleep at night. With many features that include client management, engagement letter, bulk texting and emailing, client portal, a workflow manager, tasks, service checklists, and my personal favourite, multiple integrations with other solutions. You won't be out of sync with your client again. So visit www.engager.app for more info. Thank you, Client Engager, for being our sponsor and ensuring that accountants can sleep at night. Now, back to the podcast.
How long have you been with Sage?
I have been with Sage just 4.5 years now. I had to think about that for a second.
Wow.
So 4th of June, 2018.
What a journey it's been for the last 4.5 years.
Before we do Sage though, because there are, I mean, I've got one probably touching the cloth a little bit question, if I'm going to be honest with you. Before we go on to Sage though, can we talk about the fact that I always start the podcast off by saying that we've got Mr. LinkedIn sat next to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so absolutely smashed it in the world of LinkedIn. Although we did find out actually that you're closer to getting that curly whirly than Johan himself, but we'll put that to one side for 1 second.
Places above.
But what we have actually found out, or what we perceive, is you're probably more, or at least going to be more of a Mr. TikTok. Is that fair to say? I mean, you're one of the only ones on the platform from the accounting point of view.
I would disagree, only ones, because TikTok is really just a platform from what one can create content.
Yeah.
It's a great app for taking photos and videos, slicing and dicing, being playful, do a bit of animation, and do it against some bouncy music. I saw some accountants maybe 12 months ago starting to play with TikTok, but really it was just putting pictures together, etc. And some were just being, let's say, really playful, but not actually giving a really clean message. So I started to look at the app, and like any app, I want to sort of take it apart and really use it properly. And I'm just using TikTok as a medium to creating content. And what I have noticed is the number of accountants now using TikTok. So not only are they now following on my accounts, I can see that being created, but how they're using that content on LinkedIn. Because I'm not there to create followers on TikTok. I'm in the wrong age for that. I'm not doing it, please. Yeah. However, LinkedIn is a fantastic platform. It's an open platform. It's a platform for professionals, isn't it? That's how we work. We share information, intel, stories, create some conversation, and also our clients are there as well. So we're playing both ways. And I just think sometimes the fact that just having an image, some text, that's great. But sometimes, especially what I'm doing in terms of promoting the brand of Sage, in terms of we are human, we're very interactive, we're conversational, and especially with a lot of the challenges out there, a bit of fun, and a TikTok video showcasing where we may be into an event or something else, or just, let's say, swinging in a hammock, just to create those points of memory.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we were just saying earlier before we started recording how we've seen the spinning around in front of the standing desk to get into your tuxedo. We've seen the pull a hoodie over and get into a tuxedo, climbing into a hammock to announce the so basically what you're saying is you're using TikTok as a video editing software.
Correct. But actually, I've moved from TikTok. TikTok is really a publishing suite to
Right.
show what you've done. But actually, TikTok, for those who don't appreciate it, have a side offering called CapCut, which is a video editing app, which is browser-based as well as desktop PC. And that's an amazing tool. And this also demonstrates how technology, which we usually pay for, so like Adobe and all those other video editing suites, which can vary from £5 to £55 per month in terms of subscriptions, is now suddenly free of charge. And CapCut is just an awesome tool. And therefore, the way that you can do your video editing and everything else goes with it, it's just so easy. And I think one of the other things which I think we're missing out on LinkedIn is people are doing far more video, which is brilliant to see. But what they're missing that trick is in terms of captions, because a lot of people look at LinkedIn in silent mode because they're working.
Yeah.
And what's point of having a video if no one can hear you?
Yep.
And therefore, doing captions is got to be the way forward. But what do you use? Like CapCut does instant captions.
Right.
And therefore, you can edit them and you do whatever you want with them. So there's a little bit of secret there.
So there's a note.
Yeah.
But this is the whole point. You need to be thinking about how you get your voice across to the mass market. How do you be slightly different? And there will be something new in 6 months' time. Because if you think about it, when we're all locked in COVID and we are looking for that engagement, we all thought Clubhouse was going to be the next best, biggest thing.
Yeah,
I thought, well, this is going to be good.
Guilty. Yeah.
But actually, suddenly, after maybe a couple of months, nah, I don't like to be, let's say, forced to listen to something at a set time.
Yep.
I want to do things in my own way. And it seemed a bit bland. But there will be new themes coming across. And God knows what's going to be next. But we'll still have a play and have some fun along the way.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love it. Because I was convinced you had an editor. That's what I was convinced of. And
No, it's all self-creation.
I love it. Absolutely.
It's
love
quick
it.
turnaround.
Yeah.
I usually turn them around literally in like an hour or so afterwards.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. And the originality about them as well. And most of the time it's about, you've probably seen that particular short or that particular Instagram reel or whatever platform you're on, and you've maybe seen that creation in some sort of way and interpreted your own. But that's
certainly,
isn't it?
How many accountants actually have an original idea? We're usually
here for creativity.
We're not here. We're here. we're here to actually tick the boxes and make sure our clients are compliant. Creativity is really not what accountants should do, and if we are, we're probably in the wrong game. But you're correct. There's so much content, so much creativity out there. There are themes in terms of how people speak about their challenges, and there are certain things we think, oh, that's quite clever. How could I apply that to accountancy? And that's where maybe the creativity kicks in. It's the application of that theme or that reel, as you say, and apply it to everyday life or something which I'm doing or something which I'm doing with a colleague or an app partner.
That's brilliant. Hats off to you. Hats off to you. It's a platform that I personally tried on and failed so far. So no, I'm impressed.
There is a leading group of the industry that is trying to get rid of that image of shirts, ties, suits. And when you go to events such as Accountex, etc., we're long gone from those days where everyone was in a suit and tie. Everyone's going around in their t-shirts, jeans, and that's completely and utterly acceptable. Everyone is trying to prove that the industry is not that stuffy old thing. So to have people like yourself out there doing videos like you do really helps to get that across to the wider industry, the audience, because the audience you've potentially got as a Sage ambassador versus someone like Aaron or myself is huge. So we need softwares to be leading that charge. And I don't think there's very many softwares in the industry that have embraced and are willing to put it out there on the line. And
it's also knowing what boundaries there are, because Sage is a PLC. We have a certain brand, certain ethos, certain image to portray. And I'm always very careful in terms of how I speak, not only in publicly, but also on social, because those words are there forever. And therefore, I always make a conscious effort. Am I doing the right thing? But then I was also doing the right thing in terms of actually showing what we are internally in Sage, because we have 12,000 people within Sage as an organization. And it always amazes me that I'm not the brightest person in the room. It's brilliant to go into a meeting and there are some really amazing individuals. You just don't see them, but they are doing amazing things, technology, forward thinking. And this is why I'm so excited by my role within Sage, is because, yeah, accountancy is great. A whole variety of clients you work with. Sage, potentially my accountants and bookkeepers are now my clients in terms of work with, but I'm always learning something every day. And that's the enjoyment which I get. The trouble is you don't see that externally. And really that's sometimes the challenge that Sage probably has, to actually portray what we do every day internally in terms of how we support our people, create innovation, thinking about diversity and thinking about the challenges globally. How do we portray that in terms of external factors? Even something like Sage Foundation. The fact that every employee is encouraged to invest 5 days a year on some sort of charitable donation, and then the fact that every year is £2 million worth of investment into charities as well. We just do that. But people don't aware of it. Correct.
Yeah. Whereas other softwares, so like QuickBooks are very passionate about their employees and they're entering all these awards to be the best employer. And they've got a lot of branding and media about that, which helps to get their message of their culture across. And I think they just launched a video today on YouTube about going into a shop and buying £5,000 worth of toys to donate and stuff. But you never think, actually, what are Sage doing? What are Xero doing? What are the other softwares doing? But they're all doing the same thing. They're just not necessarily singing and dancing about it in the same way.
Because the priorities are selling bookkeeping payroll software, isn't it?
Yes.
And therefore you're trying to sort of have a sensible, continuous message. But again, everyone engages with the software provider slightly differently in terms of their ethics, their requirements, and therefore that human factor is always going to be playing through even more loudly than ever.
Yeah. And I think for your, to give yourself credit, I think a lot of that goodwill that's coming out of Sage at the moment and that whole ethos and everything else is because you're shouting about it. And that's not someone putting a gun to your head, or we assume that Sage isn't sat there saying, right, we want you to talk about this week. We want you to talk about this on this.
Not at all. I'm unscripted completely.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
Which is probably dangerous in some respects.
At the same time, it's authentic, isn't it? And it's so refreshing to see a company actually have that authentic side where there's relatability and there's everything else. I mean, we've been involved in QuickBooks marketing campaigns, haven't we?
Yes.
And yeah, we've tried our best and we're everything else, but even they're still not quite authentic. It doesn't.
Still, the questions are sent to you weeks in advance.
Okay.
They want you to be able to answer them beforehand. So they get very annoyed with me. I'm a one-take wonder because if I have to think about it, then I start stuttering and stumbling, and it gets awful. So if we have to retake, it's just So when someone comes out to film me, you read the questions. No, I'm just opening it now. What? Do you need some time? Like, no, just let me come to it naturally and unscripted. Otherwise, this is going to be the worst filming thing you've ever done. I think unscripted. I think it shouts a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's why, to be frank, Sage was quite far back. If you think of like where the accountancy was kind of thinking about what software to go with, people like yourself and the innovations and the acquisitions they've done and everything else, they've gone from being the underdog to pretty much probably going past the competition in some aspects.
And in some sense, look in the phases, because I was a customer once. So back in 2018, I was a customer. So therefore, the experience I got was Sage support was amazing. If a client needed some support and they're using Sage 50, great, it just worked, payroll and everything. When I came into Sage, clearly that was the year prior to MTD for VAT. And therefore, it was really interesting to see the approach that Sage was taking to accountants, not that every accountant felt it, was how do we support you to get ready for MTD for VAT? Yes, we had challenges. We had a lot of software to get compliant. Everything from the small to the large, and therefore there were challenges over what it's going to cost. Am I on the right version? Why should I go from perpetual to subscription? Which obviously always creates slight anxiety. But actually our message was always, what do we do to get ready?
Yeah.
Then the next approach was we acquired AutoEntry because we could see in the profession wanted to save time and create capacity, and doing that simple thing of removing the wasted time processing a purchase invoice was key. And therefore AutoEntry acquisition, then how do we actually put this in front of every accountant? So like Project Automate and really go large in January and February 2020, and really thinking about how we get practices really efficient That was a great, we had so much energy behind that. And then COVID hit. And then we changed our approach. It was very much supporting small businesses and accountants, dealing with all the challenges of furlough and all the payroll calculations, doing the right thing with small businesses. Yes, in the background, we're thinking about MTD and what we should do next. But again, there was those certain moments in time which I've seen, supporting MTD VAT, getting ready in terms of how to automate practices more, supporting practices during COVID, then out of COVID, making sure we're supporting businesses to actually survive, but then actually, what do we do next? And that phase of legislation was actually CIS reverse tax. We built all that back in October 19, but that got delayed until 2021. But we were well ahead of the curve of everyone else. So it's a case of how to use technology to help save businesses time. And now suddenly it's just been MTD ITSA. Again, the message has always been, how do we create awareness, educate, get you ready? And by the way, we have some technology. And I think that has been the theme for the good 4 years, really, because those legislation themes creates an element of focus. What's really important for the customer, whether it's a business owner or the accountant. And at the moment, as we all appreciate, MTD itself will not happen unless accountants and bookkeepers are ready. And therefore, as you can see from our acquisitions, our approach, it's all about all the best-in-class tools an accountant needs to be ready.
The ecosystem, isn't it?
It
That
is.
full ecosystem. Yeah,
Sage has been making some phenomenal moves over the last few years. Auto entry, go proposal. We can see the suite building, and based on that alone, I'd say in some respects you are outpacing your competitors.
Yeah,
because Xero haven't got that suite forming. What they've got is stuff that's quite dated in the form of Xero Practice Manager and workflow, work papers and stuff. QuickBooks haven't got that suite. What their plan is, I don't really know whether they're going to build it themselves, whether they're going to acquire things.
Acquire what though?
But acquire what? Because you guys are all over it. You've just done your strategic partnership with Hammock, which, like, the fact that you guys can move so quickly, the Stuart Hursts of the world will say you're a dinosaur, you're slow moving, etc., in the form of Sage. But actually, the leadership in Sage is pretty dynamic. To go from Hammock as a testing and a proof of concept to strategic partner with you, within, I'm going to assume, months, when other softwares would be sniffing around and contemplating a partnership or an acquisition for 12, 18 months.
Yeah.
That just shows how dynamic and reactive Sage
And maybe
is.
you've touched on it, leadership.
Yeah.
The leadership within Sage is amazing. It's a case of every large business goes through changes.
Yep.
But actually, when those changes happen and there's focus on what we need to do, and there's direction in terms of what are the key priorities for the business, and making sure that we do not dwell on the important things, that's what Sage does not do. It just gets on and does it. We do the right things. We're a cautious business. We don't think things just because we think it's the next bright shiny thing. We strategically think about the future. And when you consider what we're doing with Hammock, is actually no different to what we've been doing for the last 12, 18 months. It's the fact that we're actually helping best-in-class technology platforms to actually deliver more. Because you may have read in the press the fact our partnership is tied, because banks are wanting to get into the compliance sector. They want to submit back returns and its returns for their clients because people are doing mobile banking on day one.
Yep. And
therefore, they don't have the capabilities to do that real in-depth technical engineering, but we have. And the way we've built our technology is enables us to actually share that technology with other third parties. So the fact that we are always working in the background, you may not see what we're doing, but we're working with other institutions and technology partners to fulfill their needs to be compliant. And I think that's actually, when you consider, let's say, the right thing to do in the world, if we're able to do so, we're supporting potentially competitors.
Yeah.
But actually, we're helping support business every which way. And that's the right thing to do. So talk about app ecosystem, we're doing almost the reverse. We're allowing people to actually consume our technology.
Again, isn't it? I think Sage it's turned around its image. I started in the industry 5 years ago. When I started, I had four choices. I had Free Agent, which was great, the local software provider, because I'm in Edinburgh. Really nice guys, but they have a niche, and they're the first to say, we've got a niche, this is our niche. Got Xero, QuickBooks, and Sage. Image of Sage 5 years ago was a bit dated, etc. I didn't like Xero because of its pricing point. Didn't work for my niche of small businesses. QuickBooks, they had all these awards for looking after their staff, and their price point was right for us. But if I had to make that choice again today, free agent's still not really an option. It's not a niche I'm interested in. Xero has definitely dropped a few places, in my opinion. Sage and QuickBooks is right. They're still right up there.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, you outpace QuickBooks because you're not being held back by a US conglomerate that's dictating how another country can run their products.
And that's the other thing is, always be wary of what's happening in the marketplace. Because one could argue, Intuit, their focus is the US. That's where they print their cash.
Yep.
The UK is potentially a little plaything for them. But actually, the UK strategically is really important with them. And it's very easy for us to say, well, actually, all Intuit do is bookkeeping, a little bit of payroll, not much else, and they've got no chance. But actually, that'd be the wrong approach to take. And it's the fact that, yes, we've got all our ducks lined up. We've got all the tools the accountant needs, from proposal to processing to business advisory. But actually, it's been mindful in terms of what everyone else is doing and how they're doing it. And I like to think for what we are doing, it's the fact that we were brave to build a brand new platform called Sage for Accountants. We could see what's happening in the market. People do not want to buy bulk licenses. It's the wrong thing. People want to actually buy software as and when they want to. They want a single window in terms of their practice. They want to use technology from other providers, which that's the whole point of Sage for Accountants. But also it means that actually there is a big white space in terms of proper cloud practice management, isn't there? And it's a case of, when you think about accountants really need to save time, create capacity for a single view of information, and when you think about where practices will be in 5 years' time, post MTD for CT, we're effectively built for that future situation. Now, clearly, the competition will suddenly realise that fact, and they'll get on board and start building it. But it's a case of, it's not about the technology, it's about the people. And what we have that worked really hard, you talked about, let's say, the salespeople, the practice success managers, however you want to call them, is all the people which interact with accountants and bookkeepers. Their role is to be consultative, provide advice to the accounting firm. The question is, how are you doing? What are you doing? How can we help you? It's not about what can we sell to you, which is a completely different approach to maybe some of the competitors at the moment. Because at Sage, we're a very broad church in the various services we've got. We support small businesses, as well as large businesses. We do bookkeeping, we do payroll. We have various other technology applications, and therefore we're able to pull various levers and support businesses every left, right, centre. And when you think about the growing business, a business needs choice, and we can give them choice from a simple sole trader with a simple solution up to 1,000 member business with Sage intact. Cloud all the way, automation as much as we possibly can, and therefore even, let's say, you didn't mention Lockstep as an acquisition. That's an amazing tool when you actually look under the hood of what the capabilities of that. So this is why we're really thinking about the future and acquiring the best that we can, and also supporting businesses and accountants every day.
You've definitely, you've kind of got that dream now for anyone who wants to start their accounting practice. They could get themselves into Sage, they set the proposal out, they get a client out, they can provision all the software they're going to need, and they've really nailed that whole ecosystem that we keep coming back to. That's the secret sauce. I think, because one of the things we even started this podcast for is we want to encourage people to come into the profession or set up your own practice. We want to. That's why when we talk on a Monday morning, we're talking candidly about what our day is going to be and like what challenges and everything have. A lot of those challenges is what the ecosystem that you're providing is going to help. And can't agree more. When it comes to MTD, it's from an accountant's point of view. Selfishly, we know every software out there is going to file an MTD tax return. That's fine. Yes, they're all going to be a little bit different. Maybe there'll be a few clicks here or whatever. We don't need to see that. We want to see how we're going to be helped in getting them filed in the first place. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to be something that we're going to look at. My one question I want to ask about Sage, though, I want to see if officially now this is
won't get past PR.
I want to know if categorically now, do you still believe that the cloud is a fad? Because that was the message that we would be given as accountants back in the day. So this is where I think that, I suppose, the badness was coming from, or the sourness was coming from. Sage Line 50, but it was this hybrid cloud sort of situation that was being developed. Concept great. In reality, it didn't ever work. It wasn't.
It's always difficult to transition from a desktop server tool straight to the cloud, isn't it?
Exactly. And as accountants, we weren't getting that cloud environment. I remember calling up Sage support. I used to be a massive Sage fanboy back in the day. Calling up Sage support and being told that actually, it's a bit marketing speech. This cloud is not really happening. And we got the impression that the cloud was going to be a fad. So, do you think Sage might turn the corner there? Do you think that's...
We may have just a little bit. Sage 50 isn't disappearing.
Yeah.
It's there. It's part and parcel. It's an amazing tool. It does things which the cloud tools can't do at the moment, I might say. Because the thing is, Sage has a pedigree. We've been doing it over 40 years. And Sage 50 was possibly the MVP of how cloud products should look like. We understand that. We understand the functionality. And when people say, oh, it wouldn't be easy just to put a button on the screen. It's not. Not in cloud world. Easy in desktop world. So we know exactly what else we need to build in the cloud. We are completely cloud first in terms of, not only in terms of the services which we offer to accountants and business owners, but also in terms of how we are trying to provide a more digital feel in terms of how business work with us for the first time round. Especially when we talk about all those new accountancy practices being born. The numbers which went through the roof during COVID because accountants suddenly realised that they could work from home, they could run a practice. It's never been easier to set up a practice. I can't see that stopping. And we are really championing that sort of entrepreneurial spirit and making sure that accountants, when they start out in practice, they're not just given the right tools, but also the right advice and the guidance. And I would say learn from the mistakes and the errors or the misjudgments that other accountants have made who are quite open to talk about that and don't make them, which then means actually accountants are then accelerated in terms of how they can perform at their best and work with more clients, because we are going through a stage where there are certainly not enough professionals in the UK. Huge demand for accountants and bookkeepers. Therefore, what can we do to actually arm the UK with more professionals? It's not the technology, it's the support, the awareness, and it's the how-to.
It's a great approach as well, isn't it, for you as a marketing plan, because at the end of the day, the accountants are going to be your best sellers in terms of...
They always have been. Why do you think Sage was always successful, had a bit of blip?
Yeah.
But it was a case of actually, how do we work with accountants to give them the tools they use in-house or for internal bookkeeping will naturally become their preferred advocated solution to their clients. And it goes back to doing the right thing. So you look at education. We're working with the universities and the colleges. What do you think people are now learning how to do bookkeeping on? It's no longer Sage 50. It's cloud accounting tools. And again, we thought about the challenges which universities had. They suddenly had thousands of students working from home, no longer doing paperwork which they print out and share. This is what I've done from the exercises. They now have access to Sage Accounting for learning how to raise an invoice, allocate a payment, do a bank rec, do all those things. But how do you mark that? So we did something completely different. We built an auto marker in the background. So you just imagine a student, they've got a variety of exercises, whether it's posting transactions, could be 10 or 100. How does the teacher actually mark that work? Not just for one, but for 100 students. So auto marker checks every transaction, identifies the errors, and marks them. So therefore the scalability of that, and also the experiences the students are experiencing Sage during their learning. So as when they come out of college or university, and whether they're going to business themselves, going to work in a business, or go and work in an accountancy practice, they'll have an experience in terms of what working with Sage is in the cloud.
Okay, so let's take this on a journey. Clearly, we can see that Sage itself has done the right acquisitions. We would say that. You've obviously got a plan in mind. You've got a roadmap. If you could just put a percentage on that roadmap now, obviously can't give anything away. But how close do you think you are to the end goal of where you are now? Are you close, or are you miles?
Oh, what is that end goal?
Well, that's it. What's the vision?
Because what is the vision is to support small business and accountants no matter what comes along in the future. because our messages today, speaking to accountants, whether MTD is happening or not happening, is how do we make you more profitable? How do you ensure your staff are as efficient as possible? And how do you ensure your clients really see the value that you deliver? So they're the boxes which we're ticking. When you talk about bookkeeping tools, which that's the lifeblood of any business and how accountants work with their clients, they may not be ready to take on a proposal or a pricing tool or an automated letter of engagement tool. They may not be looking at the pretty pictures output, which you can get from Futurely. And again, even things like auto entry indexed, that's still embryonic in the UK. When you consider those basic tools are still not the bread and butter of every accountancy firm, but bookkeeping tools are.
Yep.
So therefore, when you think about what we've about to release with Sage Individual, that new solution for, let's say, sole traders, and how that's going to grow out, how we're building out the functionality and the capabilities of Sage Accounting generally as well, to tick all those boxes where people say, why can't you have Sage 50 in the cloud? Well, it's difficult to do so, but it's actually meeting the needs of what business owners really, really want.
Yep.
So I don't think that end goal is ever going to happen, but surely what we are seeking is trying to give back as much time as possible to the professional and the business owner, make sure they really understand the business performance, make sure that they are able to give advice and guidance, have the insights of their own business in real time with the confidence they understand their business performing, so people can actually raise invoices quicker, get paid faster, make sure that their staff are happy and paid on time, and therefore on top of their taxes. Sometimes really our roadmap isn't dictated by us, it's dictated by third parties.
Yeah.
It's how fast can HMRC work?
Yeah.
Because really, wouldn't it be great when everyone is in the new environment, when every business owner is in the agent service account, where all their taxes are, and I mean all their taxes, CIS, capital gains, VAT, everyone in there, all that data. Suddenly you have got, let's say, the vision what HMRC are trying to deliver, the fact to make taxes easier and more accessible. Once that's been delivered, with the software intuitive experience, surely we get in that situation where we're getting close to, let's say, what on the horizon of what's possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's that agileness, isn't it, that you've got to always be there, because you've said there about how HMRC is going to hopefully one day help us and hope to deliver a better service to clients. But, you know, the utopia out there is all about blockchain and what that could bring to us, you know.
And the mythical blockchain is, yeah.
Exactly. You know, there's still that utopia, isn't there? That why do we have to actually put a transaction into a piece of software? One day we're going to be thinking, well, that's crazy. When you've just sent an invoice out, that should just appear automatically. But
we're looking at that, trying to deliver on that, and some of our acquisitions will accelerate that approach, and therefore that's inevitability of where when one business raises a sales invoice, it'll naturally appear as a purchase invoice in the right pot and be paid automatically. You know the stock's been taken into order. That will happen. Most of that's happening already. We're doing our best with payroll to automate payroll as much as possible, because that's another pain point. And again, that's something we don't really shout and talk about, but how much we've automated that payroll function. I think it just comes down to awareness, like everything we do. And maybe that sort of explains why what I do on social media, just to create an element of awareness in terms of, if you haven't looked at Sage, please just take a look, see what's there.
I think accountants in the UK forget how lucky we are. When you look at what we have in the UK in the form of our banking system, it is painful at times with the high street banks and stuff, but actually open banking is one of the most modern banking systems in the world. We've got some of the most advanced accounting, bookkeeping, reporting softwares, practice management softwares in the world. Go to America, they're still working with checks in what's meant to be the world leading Silicon Valley and stuff. They're still writing checks. So actually, I think as much as we accountants get frustrated that software companies are a bit slow at times to, like, come on, how hard can it be to develop this bit? Actually, programming is a nightmare. And what seems really simple in our minds to make a button that does this is a real challenge for programmers to achieve sometimes. But we are still probably best in class for softwares and opportunities. Yeah. And sometimes we just need to go, actually, let's give software providers a break. Let's give them time. We're still well ahead of our competitors, our fellow accountants in other countries. What we've discussed in the past, Chris, is actually this competition between the software providers. Probably, Xero and QuickBooks, let's face it, them coming onto the scene has woken Sage up from a bit of a lumber. They have awoken a giant.
Yes.
And if they hadn't come onto the scene, where would accounting and bookkeeping be now?
Who knows? Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have moved on in huge amounts. So I think, the competition that these software providers constantly outdoing each other, leapfrogging and one-upmanship, I think it's really healthy for the industry for us to develop.
Also, it's worthwhile seeing what's happening globally, because we think that UK is leading the way in terms of bookkeeping and payroll solutions. But actually, if you look at some of our European partners, the Nordics, sometimes they'll laugh and joke at the UK partners because they are very much cloud first. Businesses are trading online all the time. The automation they have is amazing. So sometimes it's worthwhile not seeing not only healthy competition in the UK for the technology partners, but seeing what other people are doing in other regions.
Yep, definitely.
I think the one piece of advice that any new accountancy firm should do is set up practice management on day one properly. That's the first thing they should do. Even if they only have one client, pick their PM solution, whatever that may be, put the client on, set it up, and go through the process that every client goes on, gets linked up, connected up, because that is the only way you're going to grow at a pace which is manageable. Otherwise, you're going to have to take a pause, reset the balance, retype your clients from an Excel spreadsheet or something else, or maybe the wrong practice management solution. But PM is the key when setting up your practice.
Yeah,
Couldn't agree more, considering the amount of PM softwares I've got through over the years.
And you've got to learn it what's and all, haven't you? You've just got to learn that software inside and out. I'm a big advocate for the PM solution I use, but I don't even use all of the features yet, and there's more to learn. But if I learn them and I apply them, then that's where the automation comes in, and that's where we can grow the practice. So, Chris, it's been an absolute honour to have you the first guest.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure and very insightful.
Very much so, yeah.
One of our goals was, let's get Chris in, because we are QuickBooks fanboys. We don't know as much about Sage and their offering as perhaps we should, to be software agnostic here. So the fact that you were willing to come on today and educate us in the way you have has been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, sir. Thank you for listening to the Ask the Accountant bonus podcast. We have cool friends. Don't forget, if you've never heard of us before, we go live each and every Monday, raw and uncut, with the podcast release the following Wednesday. Join us, myself and Johan, to talk all about the world of accountancy. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.